Okay, in this tutorial we're going to build our post page. I'm going to break this tutorial up into two tutorials, and I'll explain the break when we get there. But the first thing we need to do is we need to take our back-end template page that we created so when we're ready to build other back-end pages we don't have to rebuild everything from scratch. And as you remember from what was inside the back-end template, we had our session start, which we need for the back end of each page. And then right when we get into the container, we're checking to see if there's a valid user. If there is a valid user, then we just have a little bit of generic stuff that's going to exist on every back-end page. We have our logout button, and then we have our menus. And then after that, we have our else, because that's the first conditional, is checking to see if the session exists. And if the session doesn't exist, it shows the login form, which if someone enters their credentials, it will submit it to the login page and then it will process it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this page now as post because we're going to build our post page. So I'm going to save that backend template, leave it as it is, and call this page post now. Then I'm going to close my backend template. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into the area where we're going to start working. Now we're going to start working in this area here underneath the logout in this main menu. So I'm going to go ahead and change this headline for backend page to post story. And first thing that we need to do is we need to create a conditional. So I'm going to put it above that notes mode there. We're going to create a conditional that checks to see if the form is been processed. Actually, I'm going to do it, well, I'll do it this way. So I'm going to create a conditional, and what I'm going to check for is if, I need to get into PHP. Okay, so there's my PHP forms. I'm going to create a conditional if, and what I'm looking for is set. And this is going to be almost identical to what we did when we processed our form for our login. So I'm going to check to see is set. And what I'm looking for is set is the post and the name of that post form I'm looking for, which is called, for now, post story. And then bracket, and then parentheses, then another parentheses, then have a curly brace, and then I'm going to have an else statement, because what we're going to do is this area inside here will process the form. If the form has not been processed, this area in the else is going to show us the form. So I'm going to go ahead and bracket that in. Now, one thing I just want to point out, remember how we talked about knifing in and out of PHP? So we've got this code set now. You're going to see me, we're going to eventually start, this will probably be, majority of stuff will be PHP inside here, but here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a space where I'm going to jump out of PHP, and right there, I'm going to get back in PHP. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I can just write clean HTML in there now. And so what we're going to do at this point, now we're going to create the form that we're working on. And to do that, we're going to take a look at our table. So here is my MySQL table. Actually, I'm going to take a look at that. This is my stories table, and this is what we're going to post into. So you see that this story ID is populated upon on insertion, so we don't need a form for that. We're going to need a form for section ID, but we're going to have to handle this foreign key differently in a form, and we'll go over that. We need a story headline, teaser, text, and then story published and story updated. Story published will take care of on our query, so we don't need a form for that. So we're looking at 4 form fields. So let's go ahead and build those up. I'm going to leave this over to my right of the screen over here, because I may come back, kind of glance at that when I'm writing my form HTML. So what I need to do first thing is just create a form element. And I'm going to tab this over so it's easy for me to see that it's inside this nested conditional. So I'm going to create the form element, and then the form element's going to have the action attribute, and it's actually going to load this same page. So we're going to do post.php. So the action attribute is saying what the page must do when the form button is clicked. In this case, it's going to reload the page that we're working on. Then we're going to have method, and that's going to be post. And then we're going to close this element. And we know eventually we're going to have to close that form element. So I'll go ahead and close that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up. I'm going to add my field set element. Excuse me. Then I'll close that element. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that element there as well. And then I'm going to have my legend element. And the structure of that is, looking at my notes here, is I'm going to say postStory. I'm going to close the legend. I'm going to take a look and see what this looks like on the page so far. So I'm gaylordcms.ou.edu, Krug, my site, /_admin, /login. Oop, the wrong login. Okay, so I'm logged back in. So if I go to post now, okay, so I'm starting to see my page styled up. I seem to have a slight, nope, that's good. Okay, so let's minimize that, get back to my code. So there's my legend. Now what I like to do here, for my each rows, I'm going to create an ordered list. And then also each form will be inside an LI, a list item. So I'm going to open an LI, I'm going to open ordered list, and I'm going to close the ordered list. And then inside the LI, inside the OL, I'm going to have an LI, and then a closure of an LI. And now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start populating those LIs with my elements. So the first thing I want to do is create my labels. So I'm going to write a label, and you'll remember this from our earlier, when we read the chapter about forms, but also when we did our login. So the label is going to have the for attribute, which binds the label to the input element. And so for this, we're going to call this for, and we're going to make that, we're going to call this section, because that's going to be section. And then we'll populate it with section. Then we'll close the for element. So there's one LI. And then right now we're going to do, I'm going to leave that blank for the moment, because we're going to do something with that here in a bit. So I'm going to skip ahead here. Okay, so then we're going to have our input element. And so we're going to have input, input, and we want the input to be type text. Oh, excuse me, I'm having a problem typing here in the dark. text. Then we're going to do name, and then it's going to be, this is actually going to be looking over here, story headline. So I need to name this story headline. And the name of that's going to be story headline. And then we're going to have an ID. And that's going to be called story headline. And I'm going to go ahead and put class in, and I'm going to give it just text so we can style that later. But we're not going to worry about that for now. Okay, so that gives us our element. Now there's a couple of other attributes that we want to add that has to do with story headline. And I'll give you a glance at what that looks like. Let me save my document real quick. Oh, I've got a glitch in my HTML, and it looks like it's right there. So by default, this is the width of that box by default, but we actually need that box to be a little bit longer so people can see the headline they're writing in. Oh, I also need to change this to headline. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add the the size attribute. And the value we're going to take there, we're going to match the size up with the data type we did in our table. So if I look over here, my headline was 55. So I'm going to build the size to 60 actually. So 5 more than that. And then I want the max length attribute to be 55 to match exactly what's in the database. So now when you refresh the page, we see now that if I were to write a headline, well, I got that backwards for some reason. Maybe that's because of the characters were in caps. So if I type in here, I should hit the N. There's the N. So I did run past it because it was in all caps. So that's the length of my headline. And then what I can do now is just kind of copy and paste these attributes, these elements, and change them as I go, or at least for story teaser. So now we just need to change this to story teaser. I realize now that I say this, I need to break this tutorial up into 3 tutorials instead of 2. So we're going to get this form built, and then we're going to wrap it up, and then we'll have another tutorial in between the last one. So story teaser. I need to change the length of the character. So you see here now I've got story teaser car 200. So what I'm actually going to do for the teaser, I'm going to change that into a different element that were the same element, that similar element that we're going to use for our body text. And what we do, instead of the input type, we do text area, and that has an open and close element. So text area, and then we have the name. We don't need the type text anymore because that just comes with it. So ID can stay. Now the size changes, so this is going to go in a different place. What that actually will be is we're going to change that to rows and columns now. So we're going to change this to rows and this to columns. And it's not spelled out like that, sorry, it's calls. And let's just take a look and see what that does. We need to add another text area here. So I'm going to, need to get rid of that bracket. Now I'll do text area. So now if I take a look at this on the page, you see that box is way too big. Text box. So we're going to go back in there and we're going to make this rows. Let's do just 3 rows. Save that, refresh. Okay, so that's a little better area to write our rows in. And now we need to do the same thing for the body text. So story teaser, class text, good. Now I'll create another li underneath there, and we're going to change this to text. And we'll make this one much longer, so we'll do 40. And then we'll refresh that page. Okay, so that's starting to look like the form. So let's go back and finish out our form. We're still going to come back to this section. This is what we're going to do in the next tutorial. I just want to get everything built up. So after that OL, what we're going to do is that we're going to close our field set, which we have. So I'm going to pull this line up. We're going to close the field set. And then we're going to open another field set. So we're going to create a field set for the button itself. Okay, sorry, I had some typing issues there. So I've got my field set, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another ordered list item in there. And this is really just styling. And the reason why I'm going through this is because I know we haven't had a chance to build a big form together. So I just kind of want to show you step by step what that looks like. And inside there we're going to have our button. So we're going to do input, type, submit. We're going to call the name of it. Remember, we called it back up here way back when. We're going to call that postStory. So postStory, and then the value, which is going to be the text that appears in the buttons that will appear. So postStory. And we're going to change the class to, we're just for style reasons, so I'll just call it submit. So now if I save that and refresh this in the browser, we'll see now. So we have our form, and then we have our post button. So if we select the post button right now, it just refreshes, but we seem to have a glitch here. It's not showing the form anymore. And the reason why is because once that form is posted, there's nothing here. So let's just do a quick echo, and then we'll wrap up this tutorial, and then we'll come back. So echo, form was posted. So I'll save that, come back, refresh the page again, cancel, and refresh a clean install. So there's my form. And when I hit post, it says form was posted. So let's go ahead and wrap this tutorial up and come back, and we're going to fix this section input element here in the next tutorial, and then we'll post it in the last one.